Hello, and welcome to this presentation about geographic information systems in instruction. I'm Charlie Fitzpatrick. I'm one of the education managers for Esri. And we're going to talk about some of the general questions that we get on a regular basis, like what's GIS and what do people do with it and how can we use it in schools and what's it look like in operation. So let's get started. Think about the world out there. It's messy. Stuff here isn't like stuff over there. It's all different everywhere. And that's where maps come in. They help to display things in an understandable fashion. And a geographic information system allows you to make maps to do analysis. So a GIS is information about the world that gets represented as a series of layers of like things that are displayed as points, or lines, or areas, or images that cover a range of scales from global all the way down to the most local that you explore on a computer. So you work with these like things and you mix and match to construct the map thing that you want to study. And you can do this about any topic at any scale, from global all the way down to the very small. We use two different complementary technologies. A global positioning system, or GPS, many of you are familiar with for helping you navigate. Remote sensing using aircraft or satellite is used to gather all kinds of data. The data from remote sensing and from GPS can be brought into GIS to help analyze the world around you. So, what do people use GIS for? They can do a presentation with it and show somebody something, but usually it's used for exploring information and analyzing the data. Usually because you have some problem to solve or you want to make a decision about something. So it's a very interactive technology. There's actually a sequence that you go through. You think about a topic or a place and ask a question about it. You gather the data together and you put together the map and you look at the patterns that appear. And then you think about, well, what if I do this with the data? What if I add some data? What if I modify the analysis that we're doing? And that leads to a new question. And you go through this process again and again and again until you come up to the point where you've made your decision and you act on it. So it's a very interactive, critical thinking, problem-solving technology. So people often ask, are there folks that use GIS in their career? Absolutely. When you go to the Esri website and click on the Industries tab, or just type in esri.com/industries, you'll see a listing of the industries that use our technology heavily. Business, defense, education, government, health, mapping, natural resources, public safety, transportation, utilities, and communication. Let's click on public safety, and you'll see that it breaks down into subgroups inside the public safety arena that are using GIS all over. And you can work your way through each of those different industries to explore. There's another way that you can see what people are doing, and that is to look at what some of the users themselves have done. Every year at our user conference, people bring maps, and we gather some of these together and create a book out of them, and then put that book up online at the Map Museum, esri.com/mapmuseum. So from the latest volume, you can see the same kinds of categories, and let's jump into public safety. And you'll see a series of examples from this past map book And let's jump into the Hurricane Ike and Houston, Texas wind speed profile. This is from the city of Houston. And when you look inside, you get to see the map that they produced and a story about what they were doing. So by looking at all of these different categories, what you see is that people use GIS to explore data and solve problems all over. These are the things that our country needs to have people working on. And there are lots of jobs out there for people to do this, if people have the skills. So what kind of tools do GIS users engage? Well, it used to be that only the biggest, strongest machines could run GIS, and therefore only a few people would have their hands on it. But as computers got stronger and operating systems got better, it's made its way onto desktop computers, and now good, strong laptops are able to run full-fledged analytical processes inside of GIS, and there are a lot of people that live on laptops. But it's also made its way onto smaller devices, and so you're seeing a lot of GIS being done with handhelds, mobile devices of all shapes and sizes and makes and models, and out onto the web. And people are working across the three different platforms, desktop, mobile, and web, integrating back and forth so that a desktop-based worker will be bringing in data off of the web and serving data back up to the web, and that might be pulled down by someone on a mobile device, and they might enter some data and post it back up onto the web and coming back into the desktop stations. The channels are moving back and forth, and because it's made its way onto these smartphones and pad devices, you're starting to see things going all over. And so we're seeing GIS is really becoming pervasive. We got a community in a tiny little Costa Rican town that is gathered in the community center to learn how to do GIS. Or we got some kids that are up on stage telling the whole user conference what they did with GIS in caves in their after-school club. It's really everywhere. So what subjects in school can use GIS? Well, science, of course, and social studies, and math, and English, and career tech ed, and PE, well, all of them. Okay, then what grade levels can use GIS? These high school seniors are doing advanced science and math, developing a 3D model of their stream, trying to figure out what happens if a 1-inch rainstorm hits. These elementary students, first graders, are taking a look at their continent, where they live, and what's around them. So all grades can deal with this with appropriate activities. So where does GIS belong? Well, this kindergartner is taking a look at her community, and these middle school students are solving a global level puzzle, and these high school students are putting together the first ever digital database about their community. It belongs where you want critical thinking. Wherever you want that to be, GIS has a place. Well, who says so? The National Research Council, part of the National Academy of Sciences, put together a volume taking a look at learning to think spatially. And they said it's so important to everything that we need to do in our lives that students should be doing this in all grades, and they can do this in all subjects. And GIS is very useful for helping people learn to think spatially. And they followed it up with a volume about the workforce and the need to fill all kinds of jobs in all kinds of careers, and how are we going to develop people with the skills to fill the positions that exist. So it needs to be in school. It needs to be everywhere. So can educators and kids use GIS successfully? Well, on the Esri Education Community website, you'll find a section that has case studies broken down into administration and instruction with subsections in each. And there are lots of stories in here. So if you go in and take a look, you'll see a high school geography teacher in Maine working with a local newspaper and doing a lot of intensive studies. You'll find a story about this math teacher from Kansas doing an international project that is heavily math, science, and GIS. You'll find a bunch of powerful stories of after-school activities, such as this 4-H story. And you'll see a story from Palm Beach County, Florida, where they did an intensive research project on the impact of GIS on student learning. A lot of great stories. So how do educators use GIS in schools? Well, think of it in terms of teaching with GIS or teaching about GIS. In teaching with GIS, you find people going through regular classroom content in social studies and STEM areas particularly, and trying to engage GIS in the conduct of what they do. The geography, earth science, environmental science that you might think of as the earth system science arena, this is the area that is most easily engaging GIS because there's so much data and so many opportunities provided for it. But the other social studies areas, the other STEM courses, the English, language arts, PE classes are able to use GIS in the conduct of their normal work. In whatever class, people should be looking at problems. It's a problem-solving technology. They're working through some critical thinking activities. They should be focusing on asking questions and trying to figure out the answers to these questions, which will steer them into more questions. In the process, they're integrating all kinds of information and oftentimes integrating across the subject matters. And so you may find people in social studies working with math and science content that they hadn't done before, and vice versa. And along the way, they engage in a lot of teamwork because you can't do a lot of these projects all by yourself. Oftentimes, you need to work with teams just because there's so many things to consider. And sometimes it helps to have a mentor coming in from outside who's able to help in understanding how some of these areas work with each other. So in teaching with GIS, you engage GIS in the conduct of your regular class. In teaching about GIS, this is the CTE environment, the Career Tech Ed. Here you're thinking about this in terms of the technology skills and workforce development. So how does the software work? How do we deal with the databases? How do I construct databases? What are the issues that we encounter in working with networks? People are doing programming. How do I get to do some of that? How do I engage technologically in a project that takes day after day after day? How do I carry that project from start to finish? Project management is also in the workforce side of things where you're looking at how do I deal with people that I'm working with to solve a problem. And I have to have skills from multiple areas. I got to work on my people skills. We have to have a whole series of competencies to engage effectively in the work environment. Many people are interested in looking at this for a certificate because the certification can sometimes lead to a job. One of the things to keep in mind is that few GIS users out in the professional using world engage GIS constantly, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Most of them use GIS on an as-needed basis for their analysis and problem solving. It's a critical tool for that, but they don't do it all the time. They bring it up as needed. In each case, teaching with and teaching about GIS, the strategy should be to learn the basics as needed. There's so many tools and so many capacities and so much data and so many opportunities, you can't do everything all at once. So get started with some of the basics, engage in short projects and tasks, and think about some of the larger and longer projects that you can be working toward. Those should have a strong personal component to engage the students in things that they're most interested in. So how do we learn to use GIS? There are instructional materials available for anyone. There are materials expressly for education. There are events available, and there are mentoring options. The Esri Press website has a whole fleet of books available. The ones to pay attention to particularly are those about GIS technology and reference books, and then about GIS education and training. The Esri training site walks you through the options that exist for self-paced training, web courses and seminars, or instructor-led training. The self-paced training is actually included in K-12 district licenses and state licenses. The Ed Community website is a zone for all kinds of materials for educators. One of the areas within it is the ARC Lessons catalog, which you can also reach by esri.com/arclessons. Here you'll find a database of lessons produced by Esri staff and others, cataloged and searchable, and you can download from them. And each one has a description so that you can go through and look at it. There's also the Community Atlas project, reachable from esri.com/community atlas. Here, youth groups put together a profile of the community and post it up online for others to see. One of the most popular ways of learning GIS has been with the series Our World GIS Education. This is a quartet of books, now in digital form, that allows teachers to go through standard course content teaching with GIS. These books are good for elementary school through high school and on into college, actually. And you can reach them from esri.com/ourworldgiseducation. We also have formal partners who focus on teaching and working with education. So one of these is GIS ETC. They focus on teaching with GIS, and you can reach them at gisetc.com. Another formal partner is Digital Quest. They have materials designed for teaching about GIS. You can reach them at digitalquest.com. One of the places that you can find out some opportunities is on the calendar on the Ed Community website. And one of the items that you'll see on the calendar that is a big one for people to hit is the Esri Education User Conference, right in front of our main international user conference. This is in San Diego in July every year. You can reach it at esri.com/educ. And finally, National Geographic Society and Esri have combined to put together the GeoMentor program. Lots of people have signed up. You can go to the website geomentor.org, Click in here to register, search for a mentor, or if you are a mentor, you can search for an educator to work with. And there are suggestions of activities for people to go through. Lots of opportunities for people to learn how to do GIS.